Hello, friends, it's Michael Parker, and welcome back. This week, the rumor that will not die arose again. Perhaps it's more than a rumor this time. Many news outlets are reporting on the New York Post op-ed by 90-year-old gossip columnist Sydney Adams that Michelle Obama is preparing to run for president. The announcement will be made in May or early summer after Joe Biden steps away from the race for whatever health reason they choose, and there are plenty to choose from. This idea has been around for a while, and my show today is with documentary filmmaker Joel Gilbert, who's been saying this for over a year and a half and even created a documentary film and accompanying book about it released in 2022, Michelle Obama 2024. Her real-life story and plan for power. I interviewed Joel twice back in 2022, and today's episode is culled from those conversations. Gilbert chronicles how Michelle Obama's I hate politics disclaimer is really strategic cover for her intense, lifelong political advocacy and how she has been running for president for several years already. It was just never announced. Joel, today we're going to talk about one of the most enigmatic people in American politics. Joel Gilbert, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Michelle Obama, to me at least, is an enigma. And I never really fell under the Obama spell. Full disclosure, I did vote for the guy twice. I was not ready to go John McCain, and I certainly wasn't ready to go Mitch Romney. So I was just like, oh boy, all right, let's go with this guy. And in retrospect, I think he is way overrated. And I don't know much about Michelle. So you have this new book and film about her. And who is Michelle Obama?
Okay, well, I set out to, follow the Obamas for a long time. I made a film in 2012 called Dreams from My Real Father. And that was a takeoff on Obama's best-selling autobiography, Dreams from My Father. And in my 2012 film, Dreams from My Real Father, I made the case that Obama's real father and ideological mentor was a man named Frank Marshall Davis, who was one of the Black Bolsheviks, Communist Party USA member out of Chicago, who came to Hawaii, and Obama admits raised him. And I said, it's a little coincidental that Obama looks just like this guy and nothing like the Kenyan Obama. So I made the case then that Barack Obama was not the mainstream candidate he was claiming to be, but he was a radical. And I think that proved to be true once he was in office. So
Agreed.
Having followed the Obamas for now 10 years, a little more than 10 years, I noticed that Michelle was actually following in the same footsteps as Barack. Barack started a voter registration organization in 1992 called Project Vote. And Michelle started this thing called When We All Vote. She runs around the country giving these political speeches. Barack based his candidacy on his personal story, his book, Dreams from My Father. And Michelle, I noticed, wrote this biography called Becoming in 2018 and went on this world book tour based on her memoir. And then lastly, of course, Barack was the keynote speaker for John Kerry in 2004. And I noticed that Michelle was the keynote speaker for Joe Biden. So it seemed like she was following in the footsteps. And that's why I decided I would look into Michelle Obama, her life history, starting, from the beginning of, where she was born in Chicago. I actually went there. I talked to her elementary school classmates, 3 boyfriends, elementary school and high school teachers, college professor, work colleagues, you name it, even her mother. And I put together this film and book called Michelle Obama 2024, her real life story and plan for power.
Now, the book and the film are out. They came out at the beginning of July?
Yeah, it just came out last week. You can actually watch the film online or get the DVD at salemnow.com, and the book is on amazon.com.
Excellent. Well, I am going to watch it, and because it's just weird. People will always, talk about Michelle and there's, say this, that, and the other thing. But I honestly can't say that I knew that much about her, and I didn't know that there was that much information available about her, but you have clearly found it. So I look forward to watching this. And you point out that, how can I say this? Well, You point out that, like, even though she's Black and she plays that up a lot of the times it seems like she was trying to run away from that part of the community.
That's right. I found out, despite Michelle's constant references to race, her official story, of course, she talks about being held back in life because of her race, growing up poor on the south side of Chicago. And it turns out none of that is true. Michelle actually grew up in South Shore, which is on Lake Michigan. It's not even on the south side. She had a very privileged childhood, comes from a political family. Her father was a precinct captain working for the Democrat Party machine in Chicago. Her father's job was basically to get out the vote for the Democrats every election cycle. And he had a job it's really a patronage job, meaning he worked for the city of Chicago and got that job in exchange for being a precinct captain. And it turns out Michelle, every chance she got to study or go to school with people from the Black community, she ran away. She went to high school at Whitney Young Magnet School, hour and a half, couple of bus rides away from where she lived, instead of going to South Shore High School, a block from where she lived. Same thing with her brother, Craig. Instead of going to the high school a block away, he went to a private school called Mount Carmel Catholic school, and the Robinsons were not even Catholic. So Michelle just blatantly lies about this stuff. She says, I went to the neighborhood schools. My parents couldn't afford private schools, which they did, on and on. So Michelle really spent her childhood running away from the Black community, has no experiences with ordinary Black folks. And I even detail in her professional career in Chicago, Michelle worked for the mayor of Chicago, like her father. Yes. She was the assistant planning commissioner, and she worked with Valerie Jarrett in this scheme called redevelopment. And that's where they knocked down the projects. There were these projects called Cabrini Green near downtown. They knocked down these buildings, made about 20,000 Blacks homeless, and gave away the land to Democrat Party donors and developers like Tony Rezko, who gave part of the money back to the city. And having proven her callousness toward the Black community, Michelle then worked for the University of Chicago Medical Center, which I detail in the film and book. And she headed up something called the Southside Health Collaborative. And the reason they hired her for this is because the University of Chicago Medical Center was losing so much money every year because people that were uninsured or couldn't pay their bills were using their emergency room from the south side of Chicago. So Michelle set up this system to actually bus them away, put them in these vans and dump them at these crappy neighborhood clinics that I visited. So Michelle has a very, very shameful history of running away from the Black community, of selling out the Black community. And in her political career, she pretends to be one of these ordinary Black folks that she spent her life exploiting.
I want to go back a little bit to this development that she had knocked down. Now, how did that work? Okay, so if we've got 20,000 people that live in this particular area, and I'm guessing these are just old buildings, and you're saying that somehow she and Valerie Jarrett were able to get all of that removed, and that land was then sold to developers. But all of those people, I mean, nobody, or do they just not have the resources to fight back? How did that work out that way?
Well, what happened is the projects, or these low-income housing projects, were built in the late 50s, and they were kind of on the outskirts of downtown. By the early 90s, now downtown had expanded, and it was rubbing right up against these projects, and the developers wanted the land to expand the Gold Coast and, build single-family homes. So Michelle, literally, instead of defending the Black community, she was put in charge of removing them. And she made 20,000 Blacks homeless. They protested, they did whatever they could, but she succeeded. They knocked down these buildings and they gave away the land to build these single family homes and developments. And Michelle it's what she did. And then she went on to the University of Chicago Medical Center, and same thing. White elites would hire Michelle to do jobs that they could not do. They could not put a white person in charge of taking Black people's homes away and telling them they're doing them a favor. Same thing she did at the University of Chicago Medical Center. She took away their health care and said, it'll be good for you. And that's the role Michelle played, selling out the Black community in Chicago.
So her dad was a political operative. Mom, I think you said, didn't work. She gets raised essentially in non-Black schools, more upper crust schools. Was her initial interest to get into politics, or was that always her path, or was it just something that was easy to make happen quickly?
Well, Michelle Obama is a political animal. She's been political since she was 6 years old. In her book, Becoming, she talks about going around with her father, who was a precinct captain, going out to people's houses, telling them to get out and vote. She befriended Jesse Jackson's, the civil rights icon, Jesse Jackson's daughter, Santita, in high school, and kind of grew up in Jesse Jackson's house while he was running for president. Michelle ran and became treasurer of her high school. She was on boards at college. So she was always a very, very political person. And it shows, people might remember 2008 when Barack was running for president the first time. She was giving speeches to sold out, huge audiences every night. And then she went over the top. She said, people remember, she said, "For the first time in my life, I'm proud of my country." And that got so much negative backlash. They told her, they said, "Okay, Michelle," they kind of reined her in. They said, "Okay, you hate politics and you just want to be the mom in chief." So they kind of pulled her back. And all during those White House years, she just kind of stayed in the background mostly. She did a lot of magazine covers. Mm-hmm. She did the thing where, they reduced the amount of food you could eat if you were at a public school. And she kind of laid back. But after those 8 years, she's just been all political. If you look at her Twitter account, it's all politics. She acts like she's already president. So I'm convinced, and I make the case, that she is running for president.
There had been rumors before that she would eventually do that. I thought that if she was smart, she would stay out of it and just live life large the way it is. But you make a good point to that. And certainly she's still very popular, and they don't have a clear person to run. Certainly Biden's not. I don't think there's any way that happens. And I mean, she would certainly be a good call, unfortunately.
Yeah, Michelle Obama is the most popular woman in America, maybe on the planet. She got 15 years of all positive media coverage. Of course, she wrote this book called Becoming, which, by the way, she says it's an autobiography. It's actually a political document. If just reading it, you can tell she's trying to reset certain things and setting up certain things and making certain claims to set up a candidacy. It's very much a political book. But yeah, the Democrats really don't have a choice right now. I mean, even if they wanted a choice, Michelle Obama can transcend all the policy failures. She can talk about nostalgia. Remember how much you loved the Obama years. Remember how much you loved it when Barack was president. So she has the ability to say, hey, I'm going to bring us all together and move us forward, and kind of be immune to criticism. If you criticize her, the media will call you a racist, a sexist, and a hater. So it's going to be very difficult for a Republican to take her on. But as I say, the slogan for my film is, I say, only the truth can stop her. And there's a whole lot of truth in my book and my film that shows that Michelle Obama is not who she pretends to be.
You're correct. She's certainly one of the most popular women in the U.S. and in the world. But there's a lot of people that don't like the Obamas. And I don't know if there's enough to make any difference, but certainly the idolatry that was given to her and Barack by the press certainly amped that up. We're speaking to Joel Gilbert. We're talking about his new work about Michelle Obama.
They could run Michelle Obama. And if they do...
Welcome, Michelle Obama!
Michelle Obama is the most popular woman in America.
You know I hate politics.
You can forget about the disclaimer. I'm convinced that Michelle Obama is running for president in 2024. She's following the exact same formula that Barack did to become president. Michelle was the keynote speaker at the 2020 Democrat convention, just like Barack was in 2004. Barack once ran a voter registration organization. Now, so does Michelle.
That's how we change America.
Also, Barack Obama based his candidacy on his personal story. Michelle has done the exact same thing. But like Barack, Michelle tells a life story that is more fiction than fact.
Transforming the United States of America.
And to transform America, Michelle plans to rule America come Election Day 2024.
You heard the ad. I was speaking to the man behind that, Joel Gilbert. When the Obamas were in the White House, and even after, I mean, oh my goodness, the press could not get enough of the Obamas. And you're like you said, Michelle was on every single magazine cover. It was ridiculous. And then so Trump and Melania get in there, and Melania, but she's a very attractive woman, knew how to dress, very statuesque. Not touching that, no way. It was interesting to watch the way that they groveled to the Obamas, yet the Trumps, Melania Trump, the woman was a professional model, but no magazine covers for you.
Right. You know, Michelle went on every magazine cover multiple times. She was on Glamour magazine 9 times. She was on every talk show. She was on sitcoms. She actually, I discovered, and I go into this in the film and the book, is she actually has some very kind of deep psychological issues that cause her to always want to get more recognition and always get more and more people accepting her to try to belong. And it's a problem she's had her whole life. I think that's another thing driving her to be in politics, to get that affirmation that she desires so much.
Well, that almost sounds like a bit of insecurity / self-loathing or something that she's trying to combat against. Like, I need the applause, I need the lights, I need the covers to make up for something.
Yeah, that has to do with her feeling. She always felt that she didn't belong, like she kind of wasn't good enough. And it's actually kind of true. In almost every situation she went into, she had jobs that were created for her. She got into Princeton because of her brother, who was a legacy student. And I chronicle how she got very poor grades in her first semester at Princeton, so she escaped to sociology, the sociology department, and Afro-American studies to try to maintain good grades. So she was always in these situations and always doubted whether she really belonged there. So that's one reason she went on all these magazine covers. And as you mentioned, Melania Trump, who was a professional model, they never offered her any of these covers. So that just shows you how reverent the media is. I mean, there were 6 biographies written on Michelle Obama, 6, and none of them did any of the research that I did. I went kind of deep into everything, talked to her teachers, professors, friends, you name it. And I come up with a portrait of Michelle Obama, which is very, very different from what she wants people to believe.
So what was the median of the people that you interviewed that knew her? What was the average? Was she super well liked? 50-50, not liked? What was the general consensus?
Well, they all kind of said she was a very serious person. She was a perfectionist. I think she still is. And she's not somebody that, really has a good sense of humor or laughs a lot. And I think you can see that in the way she talks even today. She mostly tells stories about gender and race. That's all she talks about. And she chronically has been trying to manipulate Black voters with these phony claims of racial discrimination to get their sympathy and their votes. One story I found out about was she's been telling this story for 15 years about saying that she was racially profiled by her high school counselor as regards applying to Princeton University. She says the counselor said, "Oh, you're Black, maybe you're stretching." And it turns out that her counselor was a church-going Black woman who was assistant principal and knew Michelle for years. So I don't think she racially profiled Michelle, but that's one of the stories Michelle tells, because she actually, in reality, she suffered discrimination from the Black community. Michelle was accused of acting white and talking white her whole life. She even talks about getting into a fist fight with a girl who had called her an Oreo, meaning Black on the outside, white on the inside. So that's a major insult. So Michelle's real experience was, being picked on by Black people. She was afraid of Black people. She talked about, I've got her on tape, she talked about being afraid of going out of her house, being afraid of getting beat up. So I think Michelle, that's the reason she ran away from the Black community every chance she got. And then I think she projects her fear of Black people onto the rest of America, which don't feel the way she does.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. Well, another thing that you point out, like Barack, she had people within her social circle. I think you say this is her close friend and even use the word mentor. This person, Bernadine Ray Dorn, you say was an anti-American radical, much like Barack's buddy that was in the Weather Underground or what have you. Speak to that.
Right. So, of course, Bill Ayers is the Weather Underground former terrorist that was good friends with Barack Obama for many, many years, going back to when he was in college. Bill Ayers' father helped bring Obama from New York to Chicago to head up something called the Developing Communities Project, where they were trying to infiltrate the black church groups because they were so highly organized. And Obama was kind of a front man. And it was based on the rather racist idea that if someone looks like you, they might have, you would assume they have your interest at heart. So Barack was started in Chicago because Bill Ayers' father helped fund his job as a community organizer. Now, Bill Ayers' wife was also at the top of the Weather Underground, was Bernadine Dorn, small circle, and she worked with Michelle Obama for 3 years at the Sidley Austin law firm in Chicago. And I chronicle in my film that it was Bernadine Dorn that taught Michelle something called the politics of fear. And you see how in 2008, Michelle, word for word, just quoted from Bernadine Dorn's Politics of Fear. That's this idea, she says, that we're all afraid of each other and we're afraid to be in the community and we're afraid of everyone. It's this kind of very paranoid idea that Bernadine Dorn used to talk about in the 60s. So there's no question that Bernadine Dorn was a huge influence on radicalizing Michelle Obama. And so much so that Barack and Michelle used to have dinner at their house weekly for years. And Barack launched his first campaign for state senate at Bill Ayers' house. So Bernadine Dorn was a huge influence on Michelle. It cannot be overstated.
This woman, Bernadine Ray Dorn, was married to Bill Ayers.
Yeah, Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers, they actually adopted, of all people, they adopted Chesa Boudin, whose parents went to jail for killing 3 people in the Nyack robbery in 1981 to fund terrorism. So they adopted Chesa Boudin, only 2 years old, and radicalized him. He became the DA of San Francisco and was recently removed. Yes. So they have a very, very powerful influence on people, and Michelle was radicalized by Bernadine Dorn.
And let's talk a little bit about Valerie Jarrett as well, because I was not a big fan of Valerie Jarrett, but she was a bit mysterious as well. And she clearly goes back. So she knew Michelle first, or she also knew Barack?
Yeah, Valerie Jarrett worked for the mayor of Chicago. Michelle was working at Sidley Austin law firm. After 3 years, she tried to get a job at the University of Chicago legal department to be a lawyer at the university, which is a pretty cushy job. There were no openings. So Susan Scher actually had worked at the University of Chicago, sent her over to the mayor's office because they were being sued for not having enough blacks working in the administration. And that's when Michelle met Valerie Jarrett, who hired her and kept her under her wing. So Michelle talked about how she openly talks about Valerie Jarrett being her idol. Michelle idolizes Black people that are light-skinned. In high school, she talks about her best friend was this girl named Diane Gore, who was light-skinned. She talks about how Valerie Jarrett is light-skinned. So Michelle always gravitated toward people that were light-skinned blacks or working with white people, studying with white people. She has very much almost no connection to the Black community. And that's her biggest weakness in politics, is she really is more white than she is Black. And that's why she goes so over the top on this racial stuff, trying to manipulate Black voters with these claims of discrimination, which never happened.
And you point out that she was here in LA, I think a month ago, and she was giving one of these fiery speeches. When we all vote, she's got this organization, and she was just here, I think last month, doing that.
Yeah, that's right. Michelle has this voter registration organization. Lo and behold, it's similar to what Barack did when he started in politics. And Michelle gives these speeches that pretty much touch on every Democrat talking point. Michelle is very good at reciting the Democrat talking points. She rarely has any original thoughts or original policies of any kind. She just simply goes through whatever the talking points are, and she's pretty good at it. Michelle is actually a better speaker than Barack is or was. She's a better politician. She speaks with more emotion, and she comes off more authentic. The only problem she has is my film and my book pretty much flush her out as someone who's not very authentic. And that's something that you'll have to deal with.
Because I think that Barack, I mean, even though I'm not a big fan now, and I voted for him twice because I voted for him over the other two people that I didn't like at all. I can see why people like him because he seems laid back. He seems like he's smooth but she seems intense. So I think there was probably less people that like her than like him.
Well, yeah, the Obamas are somewhat similar to the Clintons. You know, Bill Clinton was kind of disorganized, kind of a fun guy. Barack also kind of disorganized, kind of a fun guy, but Barack was much more ideological once you really start talking to him. Whereas Hillary and Michelle Obama are somewhat alike in that they're the drivers that pretty much pushed everything forward. Michelle has the advantage of she did not do what Hillary did. Hillary's, remember Bill Clinton said you get 2 for 1. You vote for me, you get Hillary also. So Hillary injected herself into politics during Clinton's terms in office, and that turned a lot of people off. They caught Michelle at the beginning before Barack was elected, and they pretty much told her, you need to kind of lay back. So she was able to benefit from all those years of magazine covers and, talking about getting healthy and eating good food and that kind of thing. So she did develop a very, very good reputation rather than what Hillary did, which was she was too political all those years.
And I don't remember how it all went down, but her whole school lunch thing was a bit of a disaster because weren't people complaining that, oh my God, I got 2 carrots and a block of Jell-O or something?
Yeah, so that was one of Michelle's initiatives. In addition to exercise, she wanted to remake the menus of school children and basically cut down their food. Not dissimilar from what she did to the Black community in Chicago. She took away their homes, made them 20,000 people homeless and said, hey, it's going to be good for you. It's better for you. She took away their health care and said, it's better for you. So she did the same thing, taking away food from children in schools and said, it's going to be better for you. So that's pretty much something Michelle had done before. And people do remember that very well, her healthy eating initiative that turned out to be a disaster.
And would you be one of those people that would say that the Biden administration has been a third term of the Obamas?
Yeah, I think there's no question when you look at the personnel that came in to the White House, back to the White House, are the same gang as Obama's staff, starting with Susan Rice, who was the head of, a foreign policy person. Now she's the head of domestic policy. So right there, that tells you probably what's going on and who's pulling the strings. I think if you're mad at Biden or you blame Biden for things, you're kind of playing into their hands. I think Biden is a kind of a disposable front man for the Democrats. And, Michelle Obama is going to come in next year. I think in the spring sometime, she's going to say, well, I hate politics, but everyone's been asking me to run. And I do love this country, so I'm going to form a committee to explore whether I should run for president. I think she's going to pretend to do it reluctantly. But in fact, she's already running for president.
Well, everything you say sounds reasonable, and it's not a bad bet, but it's bad for America because I can't help but look back on the Obama years. On one hand, we're like, hey, we got a Black president. That's pretty cool. And yet, to me, as a guy who's pushing 60, what I saw during those 8 years was a return to racial unrest that I don't think as a country we had seen for many, many years. There were problems in the 90s for sure. I mean, I'm here in LA when the riots happened. You were probably here, but just the sheer breakdown and the rise in civil incivility, I guess, and racial tension seemed to me to increase under a Black president. And I'm not saying that Obama was the reason for that, but I don't think that he helped it. And I did not see that coming at the time.
Well, Obama sold himself to the country as a racial healer, okay? Yeah. He initially tried to even was lecturing Black people when he was running for president about taking responsibility. And Jesse Jackson put him in his place really quick. And then he stopped that. And he needed Black support, Black voters. And in 2012, you might remember that nothing had improved for minorities. He didn't do anything for the Black community. Illegals were coming in, taking jobs, driving down wages. Unemployment was very high. And the Black community was not in the tank to vote for Obama. So Obama jumped on this Trayvon Martin case with George Zimmerman. And he said, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. And they got the FBI involved and exacerbated that situation where George Zimmerman had shot Trayvon Martin in self-defense. He was actually exonerated by the local police. I actually made a film about this later. And
Yes.
Only once they, went to trial a year later, of course, he was exonerated again. But, stirring up the pot, the racial pot, and igniting racial animus became Obama's way to keep Black support and get Black support going. He was a supporter of Black Lives Matter, on and on. So it was all about really that Barack did not have the street cred. He didn't have any street cred in the Black community. Michelle Obama does not have any street cred in the Black community. They have to make things up, whether it's claiming that they were discriminated against or they had racial incidences. And Michelle is really good at that. She's always claiming to have experienced racial discrimination. She claims, of course, to have experienced white flight, to have witnessed white people moving out of her neighborhood. Never happened. The white people moved out of South Shore 2 years before she moved in. She never saw anything. So that's what that racial animus is about. It's about the Obamas not having any street cred or any natural Black support because they had no experiences of ordinary Black people. And they had to invent and exacerbate racial problems in order to get support.
I am speaking with Joel Gilbert. We were talking about his new book and documentary film about Michelle Obama. And Joel, I think you're making a very good case. She certainly could run if she wanted to. And that has been an idea that some people thought would eventually come to pass. And if she decides to run, she will absolutely be formidable. So, but there's also people on the perimeter like a Gavin Newsom or a Kamala Harris, and Gavin Newsom, terrible governor in my opinion, but he's slick. He looks good in a suit. They showed him rolling up to the White House the other day. He was rolling his sleeves up, acting like he was going to take the keys and drive the car. And then there's Kamala, of course, but Michelle would certainly, no pun intended, trump them all, which brings us to, let's say it's Trump versus Michelle. What happens?
Yeah. Okay. So the Democrats you mentioned, like Newsom and Kamala, whatever she wants to be called.
Yeah.
Those are people that are looking for a vice presidential spot. Maybe they're not serious candidates. Michelle's popularity is so great that, they wouldn't have any chance whatsoever. On the Republican side, I think it's clear. Trump has made it clear that he's running. I think every day that Biden's in office, it kind of makes Trump's presidency look better. And I think it could very likely be Donald Trump versus Michelle Obama for 2024.
That will be tight because there are the people that love the Obamas. There's also a lot of those are the same people that hate Trump. And so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people who love Trump. There's a lot of people that hate the Obamas. So I think that would be a pretty tight race.
Well, Michelle doesn't necessarily carry any of the negativity. If you hated Barack's presidency, you don't necessarily transfer that automatically to Michelle. So she kind of comes with a clean slate as the first lady, former first lady. And, if you look at her Twitter account, she's all politics all the time. She's got 100 million followers on her different social media. And she's been working the audience for years, that core voting block of working women and, that Oprah crowd or that Hillary crowd. She's kind of captured them with her book and all of her initiatives. So I think Michelle's going to be in a very strong position. And, I think Donald Trump is the likely nominee unless the January 6th committee does some trick to prevent him from running. I think he will be the nominee.
I think you're probably right. And we've heard whispers that maybe they've already done a deal, that he and DeSantis have done a deal. If Michelle were to run and win, holy cow, 8 years of Barack, third term with Biden, and then 4 or 8 more of Michelle Obama. My Lord.
Well,
I don't think
that's the fundamental transformation that Barack talked about back in 2008. He said, we're going to fundamentally transform the United States of America. Look, Michelle has she's got the popularity to do it. And, the problem she has is, as I say, only the truth can stop her. Her real story about growing up in South Shore, running away from the Black community, selling out the Black community again and again is not something that's going to be welcome if people find out what she really was all about before she became First Lady.
The only place that I would differ with you, Joel, is I do think she carries some of the baggage of Barack, and because it's just like I can't separate her from him. So it's like, in my mind, all the problems that he brought, we're going to get that again. So, and there's a lot of people that don't like them or don't like Barack, so they don't like either of them. However, there may still be more people that like her than dislike her.
Yeah, Michelle has just such a huge positive image. She's the most popular woman in America. She's just proven her popularity again and again, and she's worked on it for some years. But when she starts talking politics, she starts talking race, she starts talking gender, and she really doesn't have too much to say that's not these statements that you kind of expect her to say. So she does have some weaknesses, but it'll be up to a Republican, maybe Trump, to point them out. And he's going to be called, a racist, a sexist, and a hater. The media is going to call anybody who criticizes her those kinds of names. But she's going to be tough to take on, but it'll take a Republican like Trump. Look, DeSantis doesn't really have very much charisma. He kind of follows the MAGA Trump policy lead, but he doesn't really have too much personality. I don't expect him to go very far in terms of trying to run for president if Trump is running.
Right, I get it. So one last Obama question that just popped in my head that I have to ask you about. So when I was trying to book you on someone else's show a few years ago, we'd had Malik Obama in the studio, and Malik did a few hours with our show, and he and I enjoyed ourselves. We had a good time, and he liked the host. We took him to dinner afterwards. We had talked about various things, but when you were getting ready to do this current thing on Michelle, you've already done something on Barack. I'm guessing if you try to reach out to their family, you're probably not getting an interview, or am I wrong?
Well, no, actually, I'm friends with Malik Obama. He actually introduced me. He did a video introduction at the National Press Club 2 weeks ago in D.C., where I screened the film for the first time as a world premiere. And
excellent.
He's in the film. I met Michelle's mother and talked to her. So I actually, talked to 3 of her boyfriends. I talked to her niece and uncle. I actually talked to a lot of people. And that's why I think my film, Michelle Obama 2024, is so authentic. You get the real Michelle Obama, not the kind of political hit job game that she's playing on everybody, that she's, always been held back in life because of her race and all total nonsense. Michelle was a very privileged kid from a political family who has a very, very kind of shameful history of running away from the Black community, selling out the Black community.
You've done the deep homework. You have studied Michelle and Barack quite deeply, and we're going to talk about dispelling some of these myths about them. You are convinced that Michelle is planning to run for president in 2024, and you make a very compelling case. We'll talk about that. And she's kind of running on the roadmap that he set out. Any thoughts on this recent White House unveiling of these new portraits?
Yeah, that's right. Obamas came back to the White House. Michelle was there for the first time since she left. And Barack gave a short speech, about 5 minutes, just kind of making jokes, which the audience just loved. They loved Barack Obama. And Michelle came up there and gave a very political speech, which is Michelle's nature. She's a very political person. She's kind of a political animal. She literally can't help herself. She's all politics all the time. So she spelled out a swipe at Trump, saying, once your time is up, you move on. And she went ahead and gave her own little promo speech where she says, I'm from the south side of Chicago and I wasn't supposed to be here. She's been telling that story for about 15 years. And, she's kind of always laying the groundwork for her political career. And I'm convinced. I made the film and book called Michelle Obama 2024. You can actually stream the the DVD, buy the DVD or stream the movie on salemnow.com. And the book version is on amazon.com. And as you mentioned, I think she's just following in the footsteps of Barack. She's using his exact same formula to run for president. Barack based his candidacy on his best-selling autobiography called Dreams from My Father. Michelle, in 2018, wrote Becoming, her own autobiography, which is very much a political document, not as much an autobiography. Barack was the keynote speaker for John Kerry, introduced him at the convention in 2004. Michelle Obama was Joe Biden's keynote speaker, introduced him in 2020. And a lot of people don't know that Barack actually started in politics with a voter registration organization called Project Vote in Chicago. Michelle founded an organization for voter registration called When We All Vote, and she's running around the country giving these political speeches. So I just have no doubt that she's running. She's already running. She's got 100 million followers on social media. She's the best loved Democrat. She's, most popular woman in the country. So she's definitely running. And I think what I did is I laid out her whole life story, which is very different from what she portrays.
Joel, you said something interesting about Michelle in that, she's all politics all the time, whereas Barack, he got up there and told some jokes and played everybody's good buddy. And that immediately conjured up in my mind kind of a Hillary Clinton thing as well. Bill got to play the good old boy, and it seemed like Hillary was in the background, always kind of the power behind the throne. Is that a reasonable analogy?
Yeah, very similar to the Clintons. Bill Clinton and Barack are both kind of fun-loving guys that tell jokes and very likable, but they're very disorganized and they don't really have a clear path of how to do things. It was Hillary Clinton that was the glue that told Bill, you need to do this, go here, go there. Same thing with Barack. It's Michelle that got a job working for the mayor of Chicago. She was assistant planning commissioner. By the way, she made about 20,000 Black people homeless when she knocked down the projects where they live so she could give away the land to these Democratic donor developers like Tony Rezko. But she's the one that got all those contacts in Chicago and told Barack, you need to go see this person, you need to go do that. She was his treasurer in his first campaign for for state Senate in 1995 when they kicked off the campaign at Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn's house, the two biggest terrorists in the country. And I also show in my film how Michelle was very close to Bernadine Dorn, leader of the Weather Underground, who taught Michelle something called the politics of fear, which Michelle mimicked word for word in 2008. So yeah, Michelle is definitely, without Michelle, Barack never would have been president. And she's now, I think, setting out her own path to become president.
And if she does run and she were to win, what do you think their ultimate goal, what is it that they hope to achieve? Do they really want to just completely transform the U.S., or what is it? Or is it just avarice and power lust? Or is there like an ideology that they would really want to continue to create?
Yeah, well, look, Barack Obama is a radical. He was raised and radicalized in Hawaii by Frank Marshall Davis, who was a Soviet agent, Communist Party USA member out of Chicago, that raised Obama in Hawaii. Now, I made the case in my 2012 film, Dreams from My Real Father was my film. And I made the case that this guy, Frank Marshall Davis, was in fact Barack's biological father. He looks just like him. And Obama looks nothing like the Kenyan Obama, who I think was a stand-in. But Barack was radicalized into this far-left communist ideology. And 5 days before the election in 2008, Barack said, in 5 days, we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. Now, he didn't tell anybody that while he was running for president. He just said, we want change. He didn't define what change was. Change is socialist dogma speak for the revolution to end capitalism and replace it with socialism. And that's Barack's ultimate goal. Michelle Obama doesn't really say anything original. She never has anything to say that you haven't heard before. But she's very good at repeating Democrat talking points, talks about our democracy, all these little catchphrases. She's a proven foot soldier who will say and do anything to get power. And in my film, I go through her psychological issues. She has some very deep psychological issues as to why she's pursuing this political career, why she was on hundreds of magazine covers and so many talk shows and sitcoms. She's always trying to prove herself and prove that she belongs and prove that she deserves to be somewhere. So I have no doubt that if Michelle wins, she'll, follow the party line as well as the globalist line because she wants to be accepted.
So we have about 4 minutes before the first break, and I do want to get into these psychological issues that you say make up this complex mix that makes her want to do this. I guess my question is then, is this something that she really wants to do, or is it something that she feels like she has to do and is okay with doing it because she is a follower of all of the rest of this?
I think psychologically, Michelle's compelled to do politics. She grew up as the child of a precinct captain. Her father worked for the Democrat Party machine. He had a job that was a patronage job, working for the water department, but his real job was to get out the vote for the white Democrat elites. Michelle grew up in Jesse Jackson's house. She was best friends with his daughter, Santita. So she was there when Jesse was running for president. So she's always been around politics, but psychologically, she always talks about how she feels she doesn't belong. So I think she's driven to prove that she belongs by going for more and more Netflix deals and book deals and politics. She can never be satisfied because she wants to show that she deserves what she's getting. And I think to this point, she feels she doesn't deserve what she's achieved. And I think the ultimate way to do that is to be president for her. Look, Michelle is the most popular woman in the country. She's had 15 years of all positive publicity. You might remember back in 2008 in the campaign for president, she was so over the top political that she said, for the first time in my life, I'm proud of my country. And she got so much negative feedback that the campaign told her, they said, listen, do you want to be like Hillary Clinton where everybody hates you? Or do you want to be loved? And she agreed to take a step back from being so political. So they came up with a story. They said, Michelle hates politics and she just wants to be the mom in chief. So that was the new persona that she put forward in 2008. So after that, it was all magazine covers and talk shows and sitcoms and pretending to be this person that doesn't like politics. So that was a big lie because, it was just covering her for being so over the top, negative political. And that's how she got her status as the most loved woman in America, because people think that she's just so wonderful and, doesn't want to be involved in politics. They don't realize that that's just a cover story for lifelong political activity.
And now she can appear to be drafted by popular support for this role.
Yeah, I have no doubt that next spring, summer, most people declare for president. They do it a few months after the midterms. Typically, it might be in January, February, March. You'd have candidates normally declaring for president. But Michelle is so well known and so popular, she'd have access to so much money. She doesn't really need to be out in front. She could declare for president, let's say next June, July, August. Mm-hmm. She could simply say, I hate politics, but I love this nation and I love your children and people have been asking me to run, so I'm going to form a committee to look at this, help me look at it, pretending that it's something that she's not interested in. And of course, then she will announce for president.
And make a dramatic entrance, and everybody will be in awe.
Oh, she'll be leading in every state by 10 or 20 points, every swing state, and it'll be plausible. She's the perfect candidate for the Democrats. She checks all the boxes. They've been trending toward ethnic candidates, black candidates, female, and they've gotten rid of old white politicians like Andrew Cuomo and Hillary. And so she just checks all the boxes. And, if she's leading, they say she's leading in every swing state by 20 points. Or you'd say, well, yeah, I guess that's plausible. She's so popular. And if she wins every swing state by 10 points, you'd say, well, I guess I believe that. Even if it was Biden or Kamala, you wouldn't believe it. But with Michelle, you would believe it because she is so popular.
Many have long suspected that really the Obamas have been pulling the strings all along in this. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, to me, there's no question that Barack Obama is pulling the strings. Don't forget that Joe Biden, when he ran for president, was a total joke. I mean, it was a joke. He's old and feeble. He couldn't put two sentences together. Kamala Harris attacked him for being a racist. He lost Iowa. He lost New Hampshire. And then all of a sudden he wins one primary, South Carolina, and everybody drops out on the same day. So there's no question the fix was in for Biden, and all of Obama's people went right back into the White House. Susan Rice, who was a foreign policy person, all of a sudden is in charge of domestic policy. Samantha Power, all the same people are in there. So I have no doubt that Barack Obama has a heavy hand, and this is his third term, and they're looking for Michelle Obama to make his fourth and fifth term, which would give us 20 years of the Obamas.
And yet we are to believe, that supposedly Uncle Joe's going to get back out there and try to run again. He does not have the mental acuity to do it. Do you think that he and some of his closest people think he's actually going to do that, or are they just playing along and they know that's never going to happen?
No, what's happening is Biden can't say he's not running again, because then he'd be a lame duck very early on. He
Copy
doesn't
that.
Want to be a lame duck. So he'll say, oh, yeah, of course I'm running. But every single Democrat that's asked if they're going to support him says no. So the writing's on the wall. Biden is a transitional person to reverse the policies of Trump, to continue the policies of Obama, and set the stage for the Michelle Obama presidency. I have no doubt.
Wow. And when that happens, when she runs, can she be beaten? Realistically, do you think?
Look, Michelle can be beaten by the truth. My film and book, Michelle Obama 2024, tells the truth about who she really is. For example, a Republican running against her would simply have to say, Michelle, are you going to apologize for what you did to the Black community in Chicago? Now, that would open a whole can of worms. So the truth is certainly there, and it shows that she ran away from the Black community as a child for education. She ran away from them. She exploited them and sold them out, working for the mayor of Chicago. She exploited and sold out the Black community, working for the University of Chicago Medical Center. She has an abysmal, shameful record of abusing and exploiting Black people. She does even admit in her book she was afraid of Black people growing up. So they would beat her up. They would accuse her of acting white, of talking white. She writes in her book of getting in a fist fight with a girl who called her an Oreo, which means you're Black on the outside and white on the inside, a big insult. Michelle always went to work with white people. She admired people who had light skin. She married a biracial man. She always worked for white people. So as a politician, she wants to chronically manipulate the Black community by claiming to be one of these ordinary Black folks she spent her life exploiting and selling out. So by exposing the truth about Michelle Obama, the truth can stop her. Of course, the media, if anyone criticizes Michelle, they'll say, oh, you're a racist, a sexist, and a hater just for questioning her. But the truth can stop her. The truth is Michelle is a phony. She's a manipulator of minorities. She's an abuser of minorities. And she's no friend of the Black community.
I'm speaking with Joel Gilbert. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, you had some. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Black community is the core voting group for the Democrats. And if they knew how she treated Black people and how she sold them out in Chicago in her professional career, they wouldn't vote for her. She has no street cred in the Black community. So that's why Michelle chronically manipulates the Black community with these phony stories of racism like Jussie Smollett. She makes things up that aren't true. She famously told David Letterman that she was going incognito in a Target store, and a woman asked her to grab something off the top shelf because she was tall and the woman was short. And Michelle gushed to David Letterman right on TV about how much fun she had helping this woman. And then a year later, she tells People magazine it was a racial incident because she was Black. So she tells these tall tales. Another big one is she talks about, for 15 years, this story about her high school counselor racially profiling her as regards her applying to Princeton University. She said the counselor told her, you're Black, maybe you're stretching going to Princeton, wanting to get in there. Well, I found out her high school counselor was a church-going Baptist Black woman who was an assistant principal. There's no way she racially profiled her. So that's Michelle Obama. She abuses the black community with these lies about suffering discrimination to get their sympathy and their votes.
Joel Gilbert is our guest for the remainder of this hour. We're talking about his new book and film, Michelle Obama 2024, Her Real Life Story and Plan for Power. And Joel, this part is kind of delicate. You've done the deep research on both Michelle and Barack, and there is a lot of pop culture memes out there about both of them, especially Michelle. And I think it's important that, because you've got enough real goods to present, that, I mean, and they are still enigmatic. And recently, when they did this portrait thing, the kids weren't there. Just feel free to dispel some of the truth is important. So let's dispel some of the commonly applied myths that may be not correct.
Okay, well, I do get a lot of comments, for example, on my trailer for Michelle Obama 2024. By the way, but yeah, a lot of the comments, people are pretty, they like to say, "Oh, is Michelle a dude?" I hear this a lot. Is Michelle a man? Right. And that's an obnoxious, kind of rumor that started with a comedian. It was meant as a joke. It was Joan Rivers, who was stopped by a TMZ reporter. They asked her, "Oh, are we ever going to have a gay president?" And as a joke, she said, "Well, we already have it in Obama, and Michelle's a transgender." Now, she's a comedian. It was a joke. But when she died 2 months later in a minor procedure, that's what set the rumor mill going, and people filled up the internet with, funny videos. But Michelle is female. She was born female, and she's definitely not a dude, but she's a very dishonest woman.
Ooh. And the daughters, I wonder, I mean, I guess it's not a big deal. And when they're late teens or early 20s, you don't want to hang out with mom and dad, but they didn't go to the unveiling the other day, apparently.
Yeah, the daughters both live in Los Angeles. The younger one, Sasha, by the way, in my film, in my book, I actually give some information about Sasha that's pretty shocking. You're going to learn that I don't have any DNA, but with her, it's very likely that she's not the daughter of Barack, and you can see that information in the visuals. But both daughters, Malia and Sasha, live in L.A. together, and Michelle often uses them as an excuse for her politics. She'll give you these radical ideas, and then she'll say it's because of Sasha and Malia that she wants to do this. It's a very manipulative form of communication when you don't say you believe in radical ideas because they make any sense. You just say, "Oh, it's for her daughters and for the next generation." So she's very good at using them, and so is Barack. Barack, what a lot of people don't know about him is he went on a junior year abroad, actually 1 semester in Pakistan in his 3rd year at Occidental College. Then he went to Columbia late that junior year to write a thesis about his experience in Pakistan. And then he only really attended classes in his senior year at Columbia. That's why no one ever really met him or knew him at Columbia, because he was taking freshman courses during his senior year to get the basic core courses passed. So that's, a lot of people don't know that about Barack, but he knew Bill Ayers when he was in New York. It was Bill Ayers, one of the leaders of the Weather Underground. It was his father that brought Barack Obama to Chicago to head up this social justice organization called Developing Communities Project. This is a bunch of white liberal socialists, and they wanted a front man with black skin to go into the church groups, the black churches, to try to recruit them for the socialist nonsense. And that's what Obama did. He was the front man for the white Democrat elites.
And it seems to me like, when we talk about Michelle trying to have this narrative of, always being there for blacks when she wasn't, it seems to me their core constituency really actually has always been white liberals anyway.
Well, the black voting bloc, they vote 97, 98% for Democrats. It's been that way for years. So that is a very important core constituency. I mean, it was what Donald Trump did for the black community, Barack Obama never did as president. Barack Obama did nothing for minorities. At the end of his first term, the black community was not on board to vote for Obama to reelect him. And that's why they ginned up the Trayvon Martin case in the George Zimmerman trial to embrace Black Lives Matter. And Obama said, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. because by inflaming the passions of racism is how they get back black people to stay in line and vote for Democrats. Donald Trump did so much for the black community and for minorities with his, prison reform and opportunity zones and creating a great economy, so much opportunity. That was the biggest threat when Nancy Pelosi said Donald Trump is, a threat to the United States. She really meant it was a threat to the Democrat Party, because that core voting bloc that Democrats need to get elected of the black community was, under assault, because they were realizing that Donald Trump was doing things for them that Barack Obama never did.
Even now, there are portions of the black community who I think have had enough, but you're right. I mean, they do typically vote Democratic in large numbers. There is some black support for Republicans right now, just because things have been so completely insane the last 5 to 7 years. I don't know, how much of that.
Well, look, what happened is the Democrat Party will BLM them or Trayvon them or hands up, don't shoot them right before the election. And who better than Michelle Obama as a black person to say that I wasn't supposed to be here. And, I got racially profiled by my high school counselor and, all this nonsense about being held back in life because of her race and suffering from white flight growing up. 100% lies. But those are the things that she does to manipulate black voters to get them to stay in line for the Democrat Party. And, so far it's worked for the Obamas.
And it's been quite Machiavellian. And it's like, because I've mentioned this before. And listen, in full disclosure, you guys, I voted for Obama. I was not down with the Bushes. I was not down with John McCain, and a continuation of that. And I thought, well, I'm going to vote for this guy. And I did. And yet,
look, a lot of people didn't really understand Obama. The media promoted him as a racial healer. Somebody said, my dad's from Africa, my mom's from Kansas. I'm going to bring us together. He ran as a traditional candidate. He said, I believe marriage is between a man and a woman and God. He was against gay marriage. He ran as a traditional candidate. If you looked at his real background and who his friends were and who his father really was, you knew that he was a radical. But he couldn't get elected as a radical, so he pretended to be this mainstream candidate. Sometimes he let it slip. He talked to Joe the plumber and said, we're going to spread the wealth around. He got too excited a couple days before the election. He said, we're going to fundamentally transform the United States of America. Wait, whoa, hey, what are you talking about? Once he got elected, he threw all the voters under the bus and pursued this radical agenda that no one voted for.
And what I saw from my standpoint, because I was doing shows like this at that point, was like, well, wait a minute. All of a sudden, now that we've got a black president, it feels like we've got a return to civil unrest that we haven't seen since the 1960s. And that's because they were manipulating the public for political gain.
Well, it's because they needed black support. Barack Obama did not have any black support in Chicago when he ran for U.S., for state senate, for Congress. He got beat by Bobby Rush. Even running for U.S. Senate, black people did not consider him to be black. He was from Hawaii. He grew up in a white family. His mother was white. He had no street cred. Michelle Obama has the same problem. She has no street cred, but she has to make up these stories. Same thing with Barack. He'd make up stories and go over the top about racial discrimination in order to get black voters in line. And that's why you experience this division, because the media hyped Barack Obama as some kind of racial healer. In reality, he was a white guy that happened to have a black father who I think was not the Kenyan Obama, did not have any black friends, no experiences of common, ordinary black people, and didn't really know any black people. But they had to make him out to be black in order to keep the black voters on board.
And remind me, because I think you cover this in the book about Barack, and his mother was a complex character as well. Did she have intelligence ties?
Well, the father, his grandfather, I'm convinced, was military intelligence in World War II. I think the grandfather also worked for intelligence organizations after World War II. He pretended to be a furniture salesman sometimes, but it's clear that the grandfather worked for probably the CIA, if not some other intelligence group. And CIA, intelligence organizations recruit in families. So the daughter would have been a great person to do the same. She studied Russian. I mean, who was studying Russian in those days? People that wanted to work in the intelligence field. She worked for U.S. aid in Indonesia and Pakistan. So the whole family could very well have been involved in the intelligence community.
This is the final segment with Joel Gilbert. We've been talking about Michelle Obama, who he lays out a very compelling case for running for president in 2024. I want to shift gears now for the remainder of this segment because the other person who remains in the popular view, and we're talking about every single day, is Donald Trump, because you've also made a film about him, which was Trump, The Art of the Insult. And right now there's this crazy, Mar-a-Lago raid. The DOJ wants to appeal this special master, and it just goes on and on and on. And it is presumed that he would run for president. And if it was Donald Trump versus Michelle Obama, wow, what a race that would be. What are your thoughts on the Donald Trump saga at the moment?
Well, it's clear that, ever since he came down the escalator at Trump Tower in 2015, there's been a concerted effort to undermine him. And it's because Donald Trump is a pop culture figure. He's somebody that people know and know from TV. He's somebody that can unite people. He's a straight talker. And he kind of unites so many different groups, and they know that he's not a politician. He's someone that really cares about and loves America. So this has been a threat to these different power centers who, have their way with the trillions of dollars of budget of the United States Treasury. So, the saga continues from the Russia hoax to, raiding his house and accusing him of doing, things to get impeached, to the January 6th committee. Any Republican, anyone that can unite people and can speak the truth and can especially attract minorities is going to be under assault from the establishment, from the Democrat Party, from the FBI, this group of interests that are antithetical to Main Street America are always going to go after someone like Trump, and they're still after him.
And Donald Trump does have some minority support.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, look, he had Diamond and Silk, Herschel Walker, these, he did a tremendous amount of things for minorities, and they started to understand that. And that alone was the biggest threat to the establishment, the Democrat Party. And that's why they just go after him so viciously and accuse him of so many things because of his appeal among minorities and just the whole country.
I had Paul Manafort on here a couple of weeks ago, and to some people, what I'm about to say may sound strange, but I think that there's something larger at work here. And he's got a book out, and it talks about, the time that he spent in jail. And he said that in jail, the most popular politician is Donald Trump. And what that says to me is not that they see him as a fellow criminal or something, but like they get him. They're like, yeah, that guy, we like that guy. And
he was on the Apprentice. He promoted professional boxing, Miss America, USA, Miss USA. I mean, he's a pop culture figure. He's funny. He's somebody that speaks their language. So certainly that's somebody that's going to be a threat to the establishment.
I think they also see him as like, you know what? The establishment doesn't like this guy. And, well, that's an indicator to us that maybe he's one of us.
Exactly. I mean, Donald Trump got support across all lines. The idea that Joe Biden, who couldn't put two sentences together, sat in his basement in Delaware while Trump was running around barnstorming the country with these massive rallies of hundreds of thousands of people, that somehow Biden got 81 million votes, 15 million more than Barack Obama, the most popular politician ever. And somehow those votes were legitimate is just not something that's believable.
Are there other political animals out there right now you've got your eyes kind of on as intriguing rising stars? I mean, on the right, I think of, DeSantis, I think of Carrie Lake, Kristi Noem. Are there any people that pique your interest like, wow, these people are interesting? Or on the left?
Look, on the left, there's no question that Pete Buttigieg is a political animal. His father was a Marxist professor from Malta, and he truly aspires to higher office. But I don't think he has the experience or the popularity. He's still a white guy. The Democrat Party is trending toward ethnic people, and Michelle Obama just ticks all those boxes. She's immensely popular. She would be ahead in every category. She doesn't need money, but she could easily raise a lot of money. And you saw her speech the other day at the White House. She's very, very political, and I'm sure she's preparing for the candidacy as we speak.
The Buttigieg thing is interesting because I hear people say what you say quite a bit, and to me, I come back to the fact, well, okay, the guy was a mayor, he's gay, and now he's the head of the Secretary of Transportation. But I don't know if that's enough because he's not like a super charismatic guy either, in my opinion. So I get it.
Buttigieg is a good speaker. He's a really, really good bullshitter. He can talk up a storm. He can hit every talking point. But Michelle Obama is by far the star, and she is the star of the party. She's somebody that people just love her, kind of like they love the Queen of England. Michelle's this benign figure that's just so wonderful, and she checks all the boxes. So
we had on a guest a week or 2 or 3 ago, and I do not remember the award, but this guest is a filmmaker, and she works on a lot of kind of causes and things. And she's a great person, but she's telling me that in November, she's receiving some big award. And, she's glad to receive the award, but she wasn't that aware of it until she found out that they're also giving the same award on the same night to Michelle Obama. And then she got excited. She goes, well, wait a minute. So I'm going to be on stage with Michelle Obama. Point being is they're just going to keep ramping it up. We're going to churn out awards for her and probably make that gradual entrance that you're describing where she reluctantly finally gets pulled into the fray.
Look, she's got another book coming out, Michelle Obama does, called The Light That We Carry. This is something that appeals to women, working mothers. She's really been working that core group of the Oprah group, the Hillary Clinton crowd. She's worked that core group, telling them how proud she is of them and so on. So yeah, Michelle will continue to get awards and be on sitcoms and talk shows, and she's going to probably do another book tour and keep herself in the limelight. And if you look at her Twitter account, it's all politics. She's appealing to these different groups. Everything Michelle Obama does is deliberate and it's calculated. And as I said, no doubt she is already running for president. People just don't know it yet.
In closing, let me say this. While I have heard this rumor for years, I did not think that it was that likely, especially after the mysterious death of the Obama's chef, Tafari Campbell, this summer. But the media refuses to cover the story and investigate it, much as they refuse to cover the issues surrounding Hunter Biden and his father's business dealings. So they will all get a free pass, and the adulation can continue, most likely. Maybe Michelle will indeed take one for the team and save the DNC from trying to elect a clearly unwell old man with little support. But would you vote for Michelle and give the Obamas arguably a 4th, maybe even 5th term? I'm not, but you do you. Let me know what you think. Ladies and gentlemen, please like and subscribe to the podcast. A little support goes a long way in this game, and that is what you can do to help me. Until next time, everybody, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Keep your heart and your mind open. Peace.